Good evening. Tonight is the 204th Ariane launch. It's also the 60th launch of an Ariane 5 and the 5th mission in 2011, and it's for two old and faithful clients. First, Arabsat with Arabsat 5C, which is the 8th satellite launched by Arianespace for the group. Arabsat now launches all of its satellites with Arianespace. Second, the SES group with SES-2, which is the 35th satellite launched for the company, and it comes after the successful launch of Astra 1N last month. You can see that these are two important customers for this fifth launch of the year. It ushers in a very busy end of 2011 for Arianespace, since the ATV-3, Eduardo Amaldi, has arrived at the Guyana Space Center, where our teams are now preparing it for a launch in early 2012. In the meantime, next month, on October 20th, the first Soyuz will be launched from French Guiana, placing into orbit two Galileo satellites, while at the same time, the preparations for Vega are in full swing. All this is possible thanks to the remarkable and outstanding dedication of all our industrial and institutional teams working here at the space base. You'll have a perfect example of their work with this latest launch of Arabsat 5C and SES-2 on an Ariane 5 ECA. Greetings, everybody, wherever you may be, and welcome once again to Kourou, the home of the Ariane family, for tonight's live broadcast of Ariane space flight number 204. Joshua Jampol here, calling the play-by-play. All is well at minus 12.5 minutes before liftoff of the Ariane 5. We are counting down on time and on schedule for the 5th Ariane 5 mission of this year, the 60th Ariane 5 to fly, and the 204th Ariane mission since the program began way back in 1979. Our two passengers tonight, Arabsat 5C and SES-2, making for another international launch, an Ariane specialty, as you know. We are coming to you, as we always do, live from the Jupiter Mission Control Building in the heart of the Kourou Space Base. Jupiter is the nerve center of the spaceport. Lots of action here. But only one of the places where a lot's happening tonight. We'll be showing you some of them, so we hope you'll stay with us for the next hour or so. On the left, the green status panels are the real-time summary of the launch services provided by the base. We check them from time to time. We'll come back to them. For the moment, we like to open the broadcast by introducing some of the key players. Here in Arianespace's Flight Directorate, Jean-Yves Le Gall-Hussard, Patrick Loire, head of the Arianespace Kourou facilities, and Edouard Perez, the Chief Technical Officer, and the living technical memory of Arianespace. Should anything unexpected come up during the mission tonight, you'll see these gentlemen on the phones to their teams here at the base and back in Paris. Any big decisions that have to be made will be made by them. But for the moment, all is green, and we are counting down to liftoff of Arabsat 5C and SES-2. Every launcher has its own campaign, which lasts several weeks. We have a first film coming up for you now that shows you how Arianespace manages a launcher campaign. Launcher campaigns are directed jointly by the mission director and the launch site operations manager.
The mission director's role is that of coordinator during the launch campaign. He's the link between the customers and the teams responsible for support and launcher activities at the spaceport. He's in constant contact with all these people, managers from the satellite side, the DDO or range operations manager in charge of the base, and the COL, who directs launcher preparation.
The COL Launch Site Operations Manager heads up the launch activities at the base. He is responsible for everything concerning preparation of the launcher. He directs a team of over 100 engineers. He coordinates their activities, making sure they all match the requirements in the timetable.
There's a standard order of operations for every launcher campaign whose organization is well defined. The launcher campaign is carried out in 2 phases. In the first, Ariane 5 is assembled in the launcher integration building. Here, the lower stage, upper stage, and the 2 solid boosters come together for the first time.
The launcher is moved to the final assembly building where Arianespace carries out last activities before launch, like installation of flight batteries and cleaning of all fuel tanks.
Other operations here include weighing and testing the satellites. An upper part of the mast is also added, then electrical and ventilation lines are installed that run from the top of the mast into the fairing for the 2 satellites. The satellites are mated atop the Ariane 5 in a room dedicated for this operation. Here, the focus is on the 2 passengers.
Over the last 6 campaigns, we have launched 3 satellites made by 2 nice builders, Orbital, Astrium and Thales Alenia Space.
The mission director, launch operations manager, and the satellite teams have done their work. Final operations can begin.
A few days before rollout to the pad, the fairing and our client satellites are hosted on the launcher. Then, on launch day, we proceed to feed the fuel tanks and we're ready for liftoff.
Outside, waiting. Inside, some of the other key players, continuing our presentation of the Dramatis Personae. This is the commercial side. The program directors are Arianespace's customer interface, the point persons, saying hello to home folks, I guess. They're here in Jupiter each with their clients. Arianespace offers customers a one-stop shop, a single interface, from well before signature of the contract to well before after the launch. The program directors from Ariane, you saw them there, Tom Panazzo and Alex Madembasi, in the roles tonight. Hi to home again from the customers. The program director on the day-to-day basis meets with his customers, reviewing the status of their satellites. Big job. The launch window tonight, 84 minutes. The final countdown actually began at 6:15 this morning. A lot of these people have been here since then. We opened the broadcast for the final moments of the final countdown. 2 other key players, the mission director and Arianespace person, Didier Saïd, tonight. You saw him in the film.
De DDO. Attention pour la séquence finale lanceur.
Working with the DDO, you hear her voice tonight. She's calling out the milestones in the campaign.
Top. H0 moins 7 minutes.
And she just called out the 7-minute mark. The DDO, or Range Operations Manager, her name is Aimée Sip. She's the very first female DDO we've ever had. The green status panels again. Basically, they're a go, no-go, green, red resume of everything it takes to successfully launch Ariane. Green means okay, red means the opposite. It's very simple. We get a red in any one of these areas, we stop the countdown. But for the moment, we are rolling. The 7-minute mark, which we have just passed, the DD called that out, is the beginning of what's known as the synchronized sequence, or the automatic sequence. It's a complex series of operations running from 7 minutes down to liftoff, gradually letting the launcher become autonomous. Power is passing from the ground, which controls everything now, to the 2 onboard computers, which will control everything afterward. The professionals say that this is the most intense moment of the entire launch campaign, these 7 minutes before liftoff. We promised a look at some of the other centers of action tonight. Here is one. This is up in the launch zone. You can imagine a lot's going on there. The teams in the Launch Management Center are closer to the pad than we are here in Jupiter. We're about 14 kilometers away. They're about 1 kilometer away. You're looking at 3 teams. The first one coordinates the launcher campaign and the countdown. They're doing this right now, and they have, in fact, been working nonstop since yesterday. They're all under the direction of the COEL. You saw him in the film. Team 2 guarantees flight readiness and signs off on the OK to fly and on the OK to transfer to the launch pad. Team 3 is a quality team independent from these 2. Some other key players. These are the satellite mission directors. They're responsible for the chronology. They decide if their satellite is ready for launch, following the campaign and its preparation as a manager, meeting with their teams, and giving the okay for each stage of the satellite's preparation. Tonight, you can imagine, represents long months, years, sometimes, of work for many of these people. That's one reason they all look so focused tonight, eyes on the screens or on the phones to their teams. We're working with high technology, but there is a human side. It's also why we like to introduce all the key players. We're lifting nearly 8 tons tonight, Arabsat 5C SES-2. That's only possible with the heavy lift Ariane 5, the only commercial launcher on the market capable of lifting the 2 big passengers. And we're going to go inside the fairing now on the upper part of the vehicle for a look at those passengers. There's the fairing with the logos on it. The top passenger, Arabsat 5C, the heavier satellite, 4.6 tons tonight, will be separated first. Heavier satellite often separated first, not always, but tonight it is the case. Underneath that you see a black bell-shaped structure. That's called the Silda. That allows us to have a second passenger. And inside of the Silda is the lower, lighter passenger, SES-2, 3.2 tons. The satellites are placed in this position in the final assembly building. That's one of the main facilities here in Kourou. While there, they're kept at 20 degrees by the air conditioning systems. Now in the launcher on board, they're kept at 16 degrees. A note on the weather, there are 3 key moments in the countdown. The final one, we're in the middle of it, the synchronized sequence. The first 2 concern the weather conditions. At T-minus 7 hours, we get a first weather check, and based on this, we decide whether or not to start the chill down of the cryogenic fuel lines. This is basically running cold water through the pipes so that later when the cryogenic fuel comes in, the temperature difference is not great. Then at T-minus 4.5 hours, we have a second weather check. This determines whether or not we fill the main cryogenic tanks. The reason being that the launcher has to be emptied of all its propellants if we don't fly, because if left too long in the tanks, they start to evaporate. Then Ariane has to be drained and cleaned and dried and refilled, and all that takes time. For example, if at T-minus 4.5 hours the weather check shows no sign of a possible launch, we don't fill the tanks. That's just one of the details about the launcher. A little more general, she stands 50 meters tall in 2 parts or composites. The lower composite includes the main cryogenic stage and the 2 boosters. And there is the upper composite, which includes the upper stage, a single engine, and of course the fairing and the 2 satellites, which you saw. And also the vehicle equipment bay, which is where all the computers and the navigation systems are housed. Standing 55 meters tall, I think we mentioned 31 meters, the height of the boosters. Take a look at the yellow bars in the middle of your screen there. At 2 minutes before liftoff, we want to linger on a shot of these cryogenic arms, also called the propellant feeder arms. They're going into the upper stage. You can see that there. This is a split-screen image of them, liquid hydrogen on the left, liquid oxygen on the right. The upper stage needs to be filled right up to the last minute before liftoff. Why? Because the cold propellant evaporates in this heat. And when I say cold, liquid oxygen minus 160 degrees, liquid hydrogen minus 240 degrees. So they require a constant topping up. Those of you here tonight, or if you have been here for a launch, you know what I mean. The DDO, Amy Sip, will call out the 1-minute mark, and we'll be into the final 60 seconds.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute. Top. H0 moins 1 minute.
So here we go, the final 60 seconds before Ariane leaves the ground for the 5th launch of the year. Here's what to watch for. When the DDO calls out minus 5 seconds, those cryogenic arms, the yellow bars that we mentioned, they will retract. That starts the ignition sequence. At 0, she will call out allumage or allumage Vulcain, which is the name of the engine, Vulcan, and the main engine lights up. Since it's her first time, I don't know exactly what she's going to say. We'll discover it together. But we don't lift off yet when the main engine lights. Count to 7. For 7 seconds, the computers are checking the performance in the main engine while it's burning on the pad. They do that twice to confirm it. If all is well, they give the order to light the boosters, and away we go.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. allumage EAP, décollage.
So, right on time at 18:38 local and right on target. Ariane began her mission. You saw her come roaring up over the ground here in French Guiana. Fine shot's always impressive for people at the observation sites around the base or in their cars around the beaches. 774 tons. DDO says everything normal on board. 774 tons at liftoff as Ariane leaves the ground. That's her mass. She's burning 5 tons of fuel per second. That's 2.5 tons in each booster. And the core stage burning another 300 kilos per second. She's following the program now on the onboard computer, which gives all the orders, including stage separations, which we will soon see. We're in the first of 4 flight phases. All is normal, she says, the DDO. The first 3 flight phases are powered. The last is not. We'll describe each in turn and in detail so you can follow Ariane as she heads across the Atlantic, where she'll separate the 2 satellites once she gets over Africa and beyond. Right now, the first flight phase, the single Vulcan core stage engine and the 2 boosters are burning. The boosters will burn for just over 2 minutes each, another 20-30 seconds roughly. They are the first to be extinguished. You'll hear the DDO call out that milestone. The 3 powered flight phases, if you're anticipating, are right now the main engine with the boosters, then the main engine alone, then the upper stage. Then we have a final flight phase which is not powered, and we'll get back to that when it happens. Fine shots as Ariane leaving a trail of gold. And there, right on time, is the separation of the boosters at about 69 kilometers up. You can see them there flaming out. They're on either side of there's 1 point of light in the middle. That's the main engine burning. And the 2 boosters with the vapor trails are going to fall back 500 kilometers roughly from shore. Before the boosters are empty, their push diminishes, and the onboard computer senses this drop in acceleration and decides to separate them, and that occurs 1 second after the computer has detected this speed loss. Coming up next will be the fairing separation, but before that, on the upper left of your screen, you see the cursor crawling up to SEPQUAF. I don't know if you can read SEPQUAF. That's separation of the fairing. There are 2 lines there. One is the nominal trajectory, one is the actual trajectory. As long as they're one on top of the other, we're right where we should be. And we've had confirmation of the fairing separation, which occurred right as it should be. On the bottom left, look at the bottom 2 lines. A is your altitude, 120 kilometers. V, the velocity of the speed, 2.32 kilometers per second. This is a shot of what happens with the fairing separation. There's another half on the other side of the frame. The fairing is dropped at over 100 kilometers because it's done its job, which is to protect the satellites from Earth's atmosphere. More on the mission in a moment, but first, the latest news from Ariane Space.
On August 6, Ariane Space successfully launched 2 new telecom satellites, Astra 1N for Europe and BSat-3C JCSat 1.5 for Japan, making 45 straight successes for Europe's launcher.
Ariane Space signed to launch Amazonas 3 for Spain's Hispasat group. The 6-ton telecom satellite will lift off on an Ariane 5 late next year or in early 2013. Ariane Space also signed to launch 2 satellites for DirecTV with an option for 2 more. They will be orbited on an Ariane 5 in 2014 to serve the US and Latin America.
September 15th, the European Space Agency and Ariane Space announced their joint scientific mission Bepi Colombo, a photon probe that will explore Mercury. The launch is scheduled for July 2014 on an Ariane 5.
It's an important step in our exploration of the solar system because after Mars Express, Venus Express and Huygens on Titan, we're going to visit Mercury now. Mercury is another member of our solar system that greatly interests scientists. We are going to be cooperating with Japan on the project. It's fitting that it be launched by an Ariane 5, since Ariane 5 has already launched Herschel Planck and the ATV-2, and will launch the ATV-3 next year, then Arabsat. So it also represents an important mission for Ariane 5, and with the coming of Vega and Soyuz, that makes for a full year.
Top satellite industry executives met in Paris from September 12th to 16th at Euroconsult's World Satellite Business Week. Here, Jean-Yves Le Gall noted the 8 straight years of Ariane 5's service without a single launch failure and its #1 position worldwide.
Everything is okay on board. We want to say hello to our friends at the Pentagon, taking the broadcast, in Newtown, Pennsylvania, the orbital people, Orbital Sciences, and in Riyadh, our friends at Arabsat. Our altitude, 181 kilometers. Soyuz and Vega coming to this base. Our next film now on the 3 members of the Ariane family.
The next Ariane 5 launch will deliver ATV-3 February 29th. The campaign has begun. Before that, next month, Soyuz makes her debut in French Guiana.
The passengers for the maiden Soyuz flight are the first 2 operational satellites of the Galileo fleet. Both have arrived at the Guyana Space Center. They are just behind me in the satellite preparation hall.
During the first phase of this campaign, the Russians will be working on the launch facilities and on the launch vehicle itself, while the Europeans will be working on the Soyuz launch pad. As for the upper part of the vehicle, we'll be returning to a situation similar to that which we had with Ariane 4, because we will be integrating the frigate upper stage and the satellites on top of the launch vehicle. And we have a combined Russian-European situation again for final operations of the upper composite just before transfer to the rendezvous with the 3rd stage. The last phase is preparation of the launch readiness review on the Soyuz launch zone. The first campaign for the Vega light lift launcher begins in November at the renovated launch pad where Ariane 1 lifted off 32 years ago.
As you see, the ground is almost completed. Inside, the final tests are ongoing. The first stage is ready. The other stages will leave Italy at the end of September, and in the mid of October we shall have the flight readiness review and fix the final date.
The Vega operations will take place in this room on the 1st floor of the launch center number 3, very close to the Ariane 5 operation room. Vega benefits from the existing Ariane facilities, not only human resources and logistics, but also the extension of the housekeeping control command.
The qualification flight is launching small scientific satellites of the Italian Space Agency, but then we have 5 Verta flights, the promotional series of ESA launchers, and these are all fully booked with scientific and Earth observation satellites. So the role of this launcher will be to serve the majority of the institutional European payload.
These launchers pose new challenges for Arianespace. 3 launchers at the equator, but 1 Arianespace family. The challenge is to carry out all these operations smoothly in order to avoid any one campaign interfering with any other. These activities need to comply with our high-quality standards for operations, secure working conditions, and environmental protection. And of course, they will need to meet our clients' expectations.
Lots of action coming up at the space base with Soyuz and Vega, as you can see. While we were watching that film, we were picked up by our first downrange tracking station. That's at Natal, over the border in Brazil. And we've had confirmation of the end of the first stage burn and the separation of the first stage. You can see what that looks like up there, and the ignition of the upper stage. These 3 orders coming from the vehicle equipment bay and the onboard computer. We can separate the lower stage now. You see what's left of the composite. Another 14,000 kilos that we don't need. We're down, remember we had 774 tons of liftoff. We're down to about 26 tons now. And we're into the 3rd powered flight phase, the upper stage burning. You can see with the fairing gone on the right, the gold and blue box of Arabsat. We can turn to the satellites now. Our first film was on SES and its long association with Arianespace.
The SES-2 satellite, built by Orbital Sciences, it's their Star 2.4 bus. Contains 24 C-band transponders and 24 Ku-band transponders. Supplies digital media to our TV family, along with comm links to the oil and gas platforms and maritime services.
We have performed the preparation work over the last 18 months before starting the launch campaign in Kourou.
Arianespace is flexible enough to be able to offer dedicated support for any scientific or military satellites with greater security needs.
Any customer who requires a specific level of security like SES-2, which carries a military payload, can be provided with its own security features. Knowing that we can adapt our organization to any change or additional requests that may be deemed necessary.
Because it is a military payload, we had a lot more security requirements for the satellite, and you handle them exceptionally well. No complaints. You've done everything we've asked for.
The SES Group is one of Arianespace's oldest, most faithful, and most important customers.
Been launching a long time here. For me, I'm probably going on my 20th year coming down, launching off Arianespace. We're very happy with them.
It's a long story. I've been working with them for many years at the occasion of several launches.
We work together very well. Both understand each other, so I think we've done quite a few good jobs.
But we never forget that in our environment, professionalism comes first and takes precedence over any long-lasting, friendly relationship.
Maybe you've noticed during the film portions of the broadcast you can keep track of the mission in real time by the 3D animations that's just above the speed and altitude figures on the left of your screen in the blue band. About 13 minutes to go in the upper stage burn. Ariane 5 performing perfectly. We're going to hear next from Martin Hallowell of SES for a word about SES-2.
SES-2 is a hybrid C, Ku and Ka-band satellite. It's designed as a replacement for our current AMC-3 satellite, and it'll be operating from the 87 degrees west orbital position. It's part of our overall fleet replacement program for the United States. We're going to be using it predominantly for distribution of television signals through the various different customers that we have in the United States. And also, because of its easterly location over the US, we can use it also for telecommunications and data services into the Gulf of Mexico to the offshore oil installations and such like. It's the first payload that we've put in place for the US government. It's an experiment which the US government wants to actually fly on a commercial spacecraft. It gives them the opportunity to use a relatively low-cost path to space for experimentation, etc. In short, Arianespace, the service they provided to us has been excellent. We have a 100% success rate with them. It's part of our multi-launch agreement. It's the cornerstone of our multi-launch agreement. It gives us a guaranteed path to space. The professionalism and the passion which is exhibited by Arianespace is excellent, and we hope that they will continue for some time to come. And with the introduction of Soyuz over the coming years, we believe they will have a very, very interesting set of products for us. I'd like to thank Arianespace, as we've mentioned. I'd like to talk to the orbital people and thank them for the last 3 years of work which they've made. And last but not least, of course, the SES team that have worked so hard to make this launch success.
Ariane 5 signal now picked up by our next downrange tracking station, Ascension Island, a tiny island out in the South Pacific, 10 square kilometers, belongs to the UK. NASA had a station there in 1989. They closed it, and ECA decided to build its own. They all these stations sending telemetry following Ariane 5's trajectory. Our next film now on Orbital Sciences, builders of SES-2. 9 minutes left in the upper stage burn. The last launches, the last time we launched for Arabsat was Arabsat 5A. That was in June of last year, June 2010, Flight 195. 4.8 tons, much like tonight's, built by EADS Astrium. The last launch for SES was last month, August 6th, Flight 203. It was an Astro 1N, a little bigger than tonight's, 5.3 tons, but also built by Astrium. Arabsat and Ariane Space go back a long way. We interviewed men from both sides to find out more about that partnership. Take a look.
Arabsat 5C is a unique satellite because it hosts the Ka-band payload, which is the first payload ever in our fleet. By having this payload, Arabsat 5C will complement our satellites, all the satellites into orbit, and our customer will have a variety of services that they can choose from 3 orbital locations.
The Arabsat 5C launch service agreement has been signed at the very beginning of 2009 and is quite atypical since Arabsat, Astrium and Thales are all customers of Ariane Space. So basically, Astrium has designed the platform, Thales has provided a payload, and Ariane Space will launch the all satellite for the end operator Arabsat.
Arabsat is always looking for quality. And over the years, Ariane has demonstrated the quality by having consecutive successful launches. And that's why we are here with Ariane for the Arabsat 5C.
This long and fruitful cooperation between the two companies started more than 25 years ago with the successful flight of Arabsat 1A on Ariane 3 in 1985.
Arabsat will continue to expand and improve both the quality of service and the coverage area. A new generation of satellites called the 6th generation. Satellite is already in advanced planning stage, and the new contract will be awarded in the next few months. At the end, I would like to thank everyone who participated in the Arabsat 5C satellite, and our best wishes and prayers for a successful launch.
The composite picked up during that film by Libreville, that's our next downrange tracking station, that's on the west coast of Africa, in Gabon. It will receive telemetry for about a quarter of an hour, and it will see the burnout of the upper stage. This is a station opened in 1986. Our first satellite, Arabsat, due to be separated in about 8 minutes. Our next film with their chairman, Khalid Balkayour.
Good evening. Arabsat is very pleased with the 5C program. It has come to an end and we're enjoying the launch of 5C tonight. 5C is the last satellite on our 5th generation program. It will be launched at 20° east orbital slots. 5C is unique of its structure. It has a Ka-band payload for the first time in the Middle East and North Africa region. It has also a C-band payload on it. This is a great effort by all parties, our partners in Thales, Alenia, and Astrium, who have built the satellite for Arabsat. And also, of course, I want to thank Ariane for launching the satellite with the support of Kenes and all the involved parties in this program. Hopefully, we'll have a successful launch and we will enjoy good satellites in operation after its finalized testing and putting it into space and in orbit. Thank you.
You're watching Ariane Space Flight 204, the 5th and final Ariane launch of this year, but don't forget Soyuz is coming up. And next up in the broadcast, a word from Reinhard Sesnick, chairman of Thales Alenia Space, builders of Arabsat's payloads.
Arabsat and Thales Alenia Space are long-time partners, and our fruitful relationship started 30 years ago when we built the first 3 Arabsat satellites. We have worked successfully together on all the Arabsat satellites ever since. So we are delighted to team up once again on this latest addition to the fleet. Arabsat 5C is very sophisticated. For the C-band mission, it will replace Arabsat 2B at 20 degrees east, which has far exceeded its expected lifetime. It carries advanced Ka-band technology with a multi-beam coverage mission over the Arabic Peninsula. And this means Arabsat can offer modern services with high-capacity transmission. It makes us very proud to support Arabsat's growth by delivering technologies with outstanding performance. Congratulations to everyone involved in today's mission, to Arabsat, to Ariane Espace, and to the Astrium and Thales Alenia Space teams who have worked so hard. We wish Arabsat and your customers all the best for the launch. Shukran.
And we have been picked up during that film by our final downrange tracking station at Malindi, the east coast of Africa station in Kenya. Ariane 5 needed a new station for that program. We opened a 5th tracking station for her second launch in 1997. It'll see the burnout of the upper stage and the satellite separations. Our next film on Astrium, makers of the Arabsat bus.
We are very proud that we deliver this satellite to Arabsat. It is the 6th satellite that we provide to Arabsat. Let's say the one Arabsat 5C is launched after Arabsat 5A, 5B last year, June in 2010. And 25th Eurostar 3000 satellite that we provide. This satellite is known, renowned for its excellent performance in orbit. It's a very, very innovative satellite. It is state-of-the-art. It will deliver a wide range of communication services for a very wide coverage, including the complete continent of Africa. We have been teaming on this project with our partner Thales Alenia Space, and is a very, very strong partner in this program. I would like to thank on this occasion all our people that have worked on the satellite and the ground segment activities. They have been contributing highly to the success of the program so far. Of course, it's a very important step to come, the launch. We wish all the participants, and especially Arabsat and Ariane Space, all the success. And we hope that the launch of this satellite will be the basis for, let's say, continuing our long-lasting relationship with Arabsat. Good luck to all.
We're coming up on the extinction of the upper stage. The satellites will be separated when the launcher is moving roughly between 8 and 9 kilometers per second. You can see on the bottom left, we're in that region now. This is also close to the speed at which the Earth turns, which is 10 kilometers per second, 36 kilometers an hour. Once they're released, the satellites can get to that speed, enter their proper altitude by firing what's known as their apogee motors, which occurs shortly after separation, a few days later. And once at this speed, they can produce coverage over a specific geographic area because they're in what is called a geostationary orbit. They appear to hover over one region, but they're actually flying at the same speed of the Earth. The upper stage engine has been shut down. You heard the DGO call that out. That's the command, again, given by the onboard computer. We're in the 4th and final flight phase now. No more propulsion, no more power. You see Arabsat on the right. The black bell-shaped structure is the Silda, which houses SES-2, and below that the white band is the vehicle equipment bay. Ariane 5 has reached her maximum speed. It was 9.37 kilometers per second. The figures on the screen come with a little bit of a delay. In this phase, which is also called the space ballet, we'll have more on that in a minute, the launcher will actually lose speed. You know, this is normal. By the time she separates Arabsat 5C in about 2 minutes, she will be moving at just over 9 kilometers per second. At the Silda separation, 8 kilometers per second, and for SES-2, 7.8 kilometers per second. Separation marks an end as well as a beginning, of course. It's the end of the launch vehicle mission for the satellite, but it marks the start of the satellite's own life. The satellite, to give you an idea, basically a cylinder. It's fixed on an adapter by a clamp, and the separation is triggered by the clamp, which is cut, and this frees the satellite from the adapter and releases 8 springs which push the satellite forward. You'll see that in just a minute. The satellite moves away from the composite, and this activates 2 switches signaling the separation. This information is transmitted to the ground, and it's this information that we'll get in just a few minutes for Arabsat 5C at 27 minutes and 21 seconds. You can see how the composite is being spun around in the direction to release our first passenger, Arabsat 5C. Arabsat, this is the 8th satellite launched by Ariane. Of the first 7, they were all double launches. The Arabsats flew with satellites from Brazil, Japan, Turkey, Malaysia, the UK, the US, and South Korea. And Arabsat 5C is the 71st satellite launched by Ariane, built by Austria. And there's a separation, the first good news, of Arabsat 5C. You see how that happens? The springs pushing it away from the mothership. There's the first good news. You notice the people in the hall here very politely holding their applause until separation of our second passenger, SES-2, which will happen in about 8 minutes from now. So Arabsat beginning her life. In about 4 minutes, she'll be acquired by Riyadh. That'll be the first acquisition.
Phase d'orientation au profit du système de lancement double Ariane.
And then there will be the solar array deployment and all the other elements of the early operations phase. But a bit more on that on the LEOPS activity from Arabsat themselves.
The LEOP activities is considered one of the critical of our mission. And we trust our technical team, along with our partners, to take the satellite from the launch separation up to the orbital location where we'll do the IoT testing. And that will be at 34.5 degrees east. Then the satellite will come into service. Hopefully, before the end of this year, Arabsat will formally give an announcement through its website. So the satellite will be in service by the end of this year.
The Space Ballet. We mentioned that the upper stage has a dual role, propulsion and ballistics. The propulsion part is over. She is carrying out her second role now. We are coasting. Remember, we're out of our powered flight phases, but that doesn't mean that nothing is happening because the composite is being maneuvered and spun, you can see it, in a series of 20 operations, which range in time from a few seconds to about 4 minutes. We have to separate the first satellite in one direction, then the Silda in a second direction, and finally the other satellite in yet a third direction. All this done by the attitude and control system using small thrusters to perform these maneuvers. You can see them popping on and off there on the screen in the white gas. They have already oriented the composite in the directions required for the first satellite, then separated it, Arabsat 5C. They have now started a second series of moves to orient and separate the Silda, that's the black bell. And finally, they'll do the same thing for the lower passenger, SES-2. They can move the composite in any direction, yaw, pitch, roll. And this is how the upper stage, in this ballistics phase, performs all these attitude maneuvers to separate the spacecraft and the Silda in the most precise spot exactly where they should be. They like to call it a space ballet in the trade. It's not a bad description. While waiting for separation of the Silda, I think we have time to go to the quiz question. If you want to take a minute and compose yourselves, get ready for the quiz question. Ariane Space question number 204. Are you ready? The quiz question concerns Orbital Sciences Corporation. See if anybody at OCS or Ariane Space can get this one. It's pretty easy, I think you'll find. Here we go. SES-2 is the 20th satellite built by Orbital to be launched by Ariane. Of the first 19, there was one that did not have the orbital name on it. Can you provide the name of that company which later became part of Orbital, or of the satellite, or of the mission? That clear? Give it to you again. Ariane quiz question number 204. Of the first 19 orbital-built satellites to be launched by Ariane, there was one that didn't have Orbital's name on it. Can you give us the name of that company which later became part of Orbital, or the name of the satellite or of the mission. If you have an answer, hold on to it, and we'll get back to you with an answer in a moment. While you're thinking, the black bell-shaped structure of the Silda getting ready to be separated at 34 minutes and 38 seconds, roughly 3 minutes from now. In the meantime, we're going to go over to Rick Starkos of SES to give us an idea of what happens when his satellite is separated.
Yeah, after separation of the spacecraft, one of the first things to do is to make sure the ground antenna can locate and lock onto the spacecraft. Then we begin the procedure of initializing the spacecraft, and eventually over the next days, the team will be doing orbit raising and then deployments. Once all the deployments are complete, the satellite platform will be tested and the payload will be tested. SES-2 will enter service at the beginning of November. So this will be following the orbit raising activities, the deployments, the bus equipment testing, and the payload testing. All that takes about that much time, so we'll be ready at the beginning of November.
So the space ballet continues up there. What's left of the composite positioning itself for the second time to release the Silda. Ariane 5 is still slowing. You can see her speed at separation of the Silda in about 2 minutes will be 8 kilometers per second. After the Silda separation, it'll be SES-2's turn. About a minute later, SES and Ariane Space have another long relationship going back 20 years. We heard all about that. SES-2 also contains something called CHIRP, C-H-I-R-P, which means the commercially hosted infrared payload, which has been specifically designed to meet the U.S. government's experimental requirements. You heard about that from Martin Hallowell earlier, and you saw the U.S. Air Force logo in the orbital film at around 11 minutes. That's one new item. Another, this was just announced on September 9th. SES Astra and SES World Skies are now one company. SES will launch 10 spacecraft between now and the end of 2014, and approximately 85% of this new capacity will be dedicated to the emerging markets: Latin America, Africa, the Mideast, Asia Pacific, and India. SES today transmitting nearly 6,000 TV and radio channels around the world, more than 1,000 of them in HD, high def. 47 satellites in the fleet, reaching into nearly 250 million homes. The Silda separation coming up in about 15 seconds, roughly. There are 6 versions of this structure, from 4.9 to 6.4 meters in diameter. We're using the biggest one tonight, weighs about 450 kilos. The Silda lets us carry a second passenger. This system has been used over 100 times in the Ariane program. I think tonight is the 105th. And the first was way back in 1982 on an Ariane 1, I should say, Flight 5.
Du système de lancement double Ariane.
And there is the separation of the Silda, coming right on time. You see the same system pushed away from the mothership by
Manœuvre d'orientation au profit de SES-2.
By the springs. Silda separation coming right on time at about 2,477 kilometers altitude. With it gone, we're down to our second passenger, SES-2, which weighs 3.2 tons. The vehicle equipment bay, that's the white band on the top, 1 ton. The empty upper stage, empty of its fuel, and the adapters, in all, something roughly like 9 tons. The weight to power yield in this sort of a launch system we're using, something like 1%, right? Meaning the Ariane 5 launcher weighs roughly 100 times more than the satellites she carries once they're in orbit. You remember our mass at liftoff was 774 tons, and the combined weight of the satellites is 7.8 tons. We are a few seconds away from separation of SES-2, our second passenger. What's the mood down there? Well, here in Jupiter, everyone very focused.
SES-2.
And there's the second good news. Separation of SES-2, smiles all around. You see, pushed away again by the spring system. SES-2 beginning her life for the SES group In about 11 minutes, she'll be picked up by Perth down in Australia. That'll be the first acquisition. The apogee motors, remember, to get her up to her final position coming on the 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 8th days. On the 8th day also, after the apogee motor firing, there will be the deployments of the solar panels and then the beginning of in-orbit testing. So SES separated right on time and on target, about 2,775 kilometers up. The answer to the quiz question, I think we have time before a replay. Remember, of the first 19 orbital built satellites, what was the company that built it, didn't have the orbital name on it? Anybody remember? We'll give it to you after the replay. Well, those fine shots allowing you to relive the emotional moments that we went through about 50 minutes ago. The name of the company who had its name on that satellite, of course, Fairchild. Orbital bought Fairchild Space and Defense in 1994 from Matra, I believe. And the satellite, Topex Poseidon, the NASA CNES Sea-Watch satellite launched by an Ariane 4 in August 1992, Flight 52. So congratulations to all of you who got that answer right. Give yourselves a round of applause. And we may have a second replay for you. Now, I think we won't have time because we're going right to the speeches. Jean-Yves Le Gall will be first to speak, and we'll be hearing from our passengers as well. The next voice you hear will be Jean-Yves Le Gall.
As you've just seen, this 60th launch of Ariane 5 just placed into orbit, a geostationary transfer orbit, Arabsat 5C and SES-2, and I'm extremely pleased because it is the 56th success in a row for Ariane 5. And you know that this summer our competitors had some problems, and this shows that once again our launcher is the most reliable in the world by far. So first I would like to talk to our clients because this success came after several postponements, and I want to apologize about that. But the chronology and the flight went well, and this shows that we did exactly what had to be done given the circumstances that we went through. So I would like to thank you all for that. Arabsat 5C. So Arabsat decided to trust us for launching all their satellites during many years now, and this successful placement in orbit of this 8th satellite shows that my friend Khaled Balkiour, general manager of Arabsat, was right to trust us. He's watching us from Riyadh. And thanks to his very wise choices, Arabsat has now become one of the first world operators, and I would like to congratulate him for this wonderful success. SES-2, it is the 35th satellite that was given to us by the CS group, and I am particularly proud by the loyalty they've showed us during more than 20 years. And I would like to thank in particular my very good friend, Mr. Tip Osterhaler, President, CEO, in fact, of CES Government Services. I'm happy that he's with us this evening, and I would like to congratulate him for this new success. That was a very exceptional launch, also because on board SES-2 we had a military payload. I would like to thank our friends from US Air Force. Thanks to that payload, we are opening up a new chapter of spatial history with this launch of Chirp, so the first military payload deployed on a civil satellite. We are very honored, once again, to be part of a world premiere. After that launch, the 5th of the year for Ariane 5, Arianespace now placed in orbit 8 out of 9 commercial satellites of telecommunications launched successfully since the beginning of 2011. So it's something incredible. It's like 87% success, and this is remarkable. Those figures are self-explanatory, and I can tell you it's going to keep going that way because during the past days we've been able to sign an impressive number of new contracts. So this evening, after that launch, we still have something like 20 or more than 20 Ariane 5 to launch and 40 payloads. So once again, and by far, our order book is the fullest of the whole industry. And as our friends say, size doesn't matter. So the following month will be as exciting because, as you know, ATV-3 Eduardo Amaldi arrived in Guyana, and we are going to launch it with Ariane 5 on in February, beginning of 2012, and in October, Soyuz, for the first time, will lift off from the Guyana Spatial Center to put into orbit the first two satellites of the Galileo constellations, and then we'll have Soyuz and Vega. I've been quite long tonight, so I would like now immediately to give the floor to our clients. And first I'll give the floor to Mr. Majed Al-Onazi from Arabsat, and then to Mr. Tip Oosterhaler from CES2.
It is my privilege on behalf of the Arabsat organization to thank Ariane Space and Kines for this successful launch. We very much appreciate the efforts of the Ariane Space management during the last 48 hours in order to resolve their difficulties and proceed with the launch of our spacecraft earlier today. I would like to add on behalf of Arabsat that we fully understand the reasons behind the last two postponements, and we fully support their efforts for the better future prospects of Ariane Space. I would like to extend the many thanks to the launch team of Ariane Space and all personnel who contributed to the launch campaign, which ended with this successful launch. I would like to thank the management and engineering staff of Astrium and Thales for their patience during this launch campaign. The work continues for them right now for the LEO operations and the IoT later on. Finally, I would like to thank and congratulate the chairman of Arabsat and the board members. Also, I would like to thank and congratulate Arabsat President for his support and faith in me to represent Arabsat in such an important event. Congratulations to Arabsat management and staff members who worked to make this project a reality. We wish Arabsat to go from strength to strength with bigger and better satellites. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much, Jean-Yves. Congratulations to you and the entire Ariane Space team. It's been an exciting couple of days here, and we do appreciate the professionalism with which the entire Ariane team dealt with the challenges that you had to overcome for this successful launch. I'd like to also thank our customers who are here from the United States Air Force for putting their faith in not only Ariane but SES to carry an important scientific payload for them. Orbital for being so wonderful to work with on the spacecraft, SAIC for the great work that you did with Air Force Research Lab putting together the payload project. A lot of people did a lot of firsts, performed a lot of firsts in order to get this special chirp payload on orbit, but at the end of the day, the SES-2 spacecraft is not really about chirp. It's about all of our commercial customers over North America, oil and gas customers, clear channel communications customers who are here, and a number of other media customers as well. So thanks very much for hanging with us through the last couple of days. It was a spectacular launch. It was certainly worth the wait. Thank you and congratulations.
Très bien. Écoutez, merci. Donc,
well, thank you. Thank you so much. I've realized that it's the 50th time I make this speech after a successful launch, but it's slightly different today or tonight because I usually asking you to meet us again for a future Ariane 5 launch, whereas this is, we have another appointment on the 20th of October. It will be a Soyuz launch that will put into orbit the first 2 satellites of the Galileo constellation. So it will be a great day for us all. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Good evening, and we'll meet again on the 20th of October.
Well, smiles all around. Jean-Yves Le Gall and the customers congratulating each other. Handshakes, the cigars will be forthcoming, and the champagne. And on a final replay, we will leave you. That'll do it from us. The big news from Kourou, Ariane 5 has once again delivered 60 Ariane 5 launches, 46 straight successes for Ariane 5, 8 straight years without a launch failure. The next Ariane 5 is for the ATV-3. That's early next year. Vega's first flight early next year as well. But the next launch, as Jean-Yves Le Gall mentioned, Soyuz maiden voyage from French Guiana, the 20th of October, a space first. We're sure you want to be part of that. Until then, Joshua Jampel, on behalf of everyone here at the Space Base, saying thank you for being with us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to being with you next time. Good night, everybody.